You know, the AI revolution, it feels like it runs on magic code, but all that code needs hardware, and that hardware has to live somewhere in these massive, power-hungry buildings. So today we're going to dig into a company called Applied Digital. They aren't just building data centers, they're positioning themselves as this high-performance utility, basically becoming the essential landlords for the AI elite. So let's see how they're planning to build the very foundation for this next wave of AI.
But here's the thing. The world of AI infrastructure just got a massive wake-up call. With global tensions on the rise, AWS data centers were actually targeted. And this quote, it really highlights a brand new and honestly a pretty terrifying reality. The physical buildings that hold our data, they're not these untouchable, secure facilities anymore. They're suddenly on the front lines. So here's the bottom line. We're in this huge race to build more and more powerful AI. And that just demands these giant, sprawling data centers, these AI superfactories. But at the exact same time, we're realizing just how vulnerable they are physically. And that right there is a huge challenge for the entire industry. Okay, so if the old model is now at risk, who's stepping up? Who's going to build the kind of infrastructure that can handle AI's insane demands and these new dangers? Well, the answer seems to be a company called Applied Digital.
Right, so think about Applied Digital, or APLD, not so much as a typical tech company, but more like a super specialized real estate and power provider. See, they don't build the AI itself, they build its home. And we're not talking about just any home. The GPUs that power these AI models get incredibly hot. So APLD builds these high-density, liquid-cooled data centers specifically designed for the heavy-duty work that companies like Oracle and other big hyperscalers, the giants like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, really need.
Now, this is where the story gets really interesting. How did we find out about their next big project? It wasn't some flashy press release or a big investor presentation. Nope. The first clues started popping up where all the best internet detective work begins, on Reddit.
So let's follow the trail of breadcrumbs, shall we? First, you've got public records showing this huge 672-acre land purchase down in Louisiana. Then, suddenly, the company's website is flooded with new job openings in that exact same area. And finally, local officials come out and confirm that, yeah, APLD is actively making improvements on that site. All signs are pointing to a massive new project they're calling Delta Forge 1.
Of course, when you ask them about it directly, you get the official line, which is pretty cautious. This quote from the local economic director basically says, yes, we're talking, but it's all under a very tight NDA. So it's this official confirmation that something big is happening, but they're keeping the details locked down. And that's exactly when you want to know about these things, before everyone else does.
But look, a 672-acre campus is seriously ambitious. And at the end of the day, it's just a big piece of dirt without the one thing it needs most, power. An almost unbelievable amount of power. So how on earth are they planning to light this thing up?
Well, the answer came, and whoa, what an answer it was. It's this number. A $2.4 billion deal with a power generation company, Babcock & Wilcox. And this isn't just about plugging into the local grid. We're talking about building their own dedicated power source, including 4 300-megawatt natural gas systems. And get this, they're not even stopping there. The company is already looking at an option for another 1.2 gigawatts of power. I mean, if they actually lock that in, it would make Applied Digital one of the largest AI infrastructure providers in all of North America. The ambition here is just enormous.
So all this power, it's really the engine behind what could be a series of absolutely game-changing announcements for the company. There are a few key dates and events coming up that you can bet investors and analysts are watching very, very closely. Okay, let's look at the clock. First, we just recently got confirmation that Oracle is the anchor tenant. That's the main foundational client for another one of their big sites. That gives them huge credibility. Next, all eyes are on April 18th. That's a date that's been circled for a potential lease announcement with another major cloud company. And then, of course, there's the big one, the official public announcement of that Delta Forge 1 project we've been tracking.
All right, so with all this good news, all this momentum, you'd think the stock would just be rocketing up, right? Well, that's not exactly what's been happening. It's actually been an incredibly volatile ride. Even though it hit a 52-week high earlier this year, the stock has pulled back hard, down 24% in just 1 month.
And this is where the picture gets really, really interesting. On the one hand, you have that recent price drop. But on the other hand, you have Wall Street analysts,
I mean, just look at this chart. Their price targets have an average of $52, with one going as high as $99. That is a massive disconnect between how the market feels right now and what the experts expect in the future. To really put their potential into perspective, just look at this comparison. Applied Digital is valued at around $7 billion. Equinix, which is an established giant in the industry, is valued at over $93 billion. This perfectly frames the whole debate, right? The bears will say APLD is way too expensive for a company that still has a lot to prove. But the bulls, they look at a giant like Equinix and see this enormous runway for growth if, and it's a big if, APLD can pull off its ambitious plan.
So all of that leaves us with the big final question. You've got this detective story unfolding on Reddit, a multi-billion-dollar power play, huge deadlines right around the corner. Has the market fully wrapped its head around what Applied Digital is trying to become? Or is it overlooking the one company that wants to be the landlord for the entire AI revolution?